I caught it. That split-second flicker in Camille's eyes, the way she glanced from my mug to her phone like she was checking a box on some mental list. She set the cup down in front of me with a smile so sweet it would have fooled anyone else. "Drink. Up, honey," she said, her voice dripping with that same syrupy tone she always used when she wanted me to relax, to trust her. Our mugs were a matched set, honeymoon souvenirs from Florence. But even those have become props in our marriage, just like the fake smiles and empty conversations. Hers had a little red heart on the side, a reminder of a time I thought was real. Mine had the skyline of Florence etched into the ceramic cityscape we'd promised each other we'd return to one day. But that day never came. I picked up the mug, felt the warmth against my palm. Camille busied herself with her phone, thumbs dancing, her lips pressed together in a tight line. That's when I caught a glimpse of her screen. A message from Wesley, her so-called project manager. This incompetent Carr will finally embarrass himself. She typed it in a hurry, probably thinking I wouldn't see, but I saw. And the way she looked at me afterward, like I was too clueless to notice. That's what cut the deepest. I smiled at her anyway, because that's what I learned to do. "Thanks, babe," I said, playing the part of the grateful husband. She barely looked up, eyes glued to that glowing rectangle of betrayal. Then she stood, phone in hand, and headed to the bathroom. The door clicked shut behind her. My fingers went cold. I'd spent the past 6 months building this pitch. Every late night and early morning poured into a deck that could change everything for us, for Westbridge Strategies, for our future. But that message from Wesley made it clear that Camille had other plans. I knew what she was thinking. Sabotage. If I stumbled today, if I choked in front of the Vailrest Holdings team, she could sweep in and save the presentation. It would be her shining moment. The moment she proved she was the real power behind the firm, but she underestimated me. She always had. I set my mug down, watching the steam curl upward like a warning. Then I reached for her mug, the one with the red heart. It was still warm, the black coffee inside glistening beneath the kitchen lights. I thought about all the times I'd carried this, firm, how I'd written every framework and designed every strategy while Camille played politics with people like Wesley. It thought about how many times she'd smiled sweetly at me while slipping the knife between my ribs. And I thought about how I'd always forgiven her, or at least pretended to, because that's what you're supposed to do when you're building something together, not today. With one fluid motion, I switched themox. My reflection in the dark surface of the coffee looked different than I used to, harder, sharper, a man who'd been forced to evolve, the man she tried to break, but had instead taught to be unbreakable. I didn't know what she'd slipped into that cup. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. But I wasn't going to find out the hard way. The bathroom door creaked open, and she stepped out all soft edges and that practice smile. She didn't even glance at the mugs as she walked past me and picked up her cup. My cup. She lifted it to her lips without hesitation, like she couldn't imagine that I might have seen through her. So she said, settling back into her chair, "Are you ready for today's meeting?" Here ye's glinted with a challenge. I gave her the calmest smile I could muster. "Absolutely," I said. "I've never been more ready." I watched her take that first sip, the faintest line of confusion crossing her features. Shellacked her lips, eyes darting to her phone. I wondered if Wesley had texted her some final instructions. I wondered what he'd promised her. A bigger role, a new title, maybe a life without me. But as I watched her, I realized it didn't matter anymore. I'd spent too long trying to build something with someone who'd been waiting for me to fail. Every late night she'd spent working had been another rehearsal for this moment. Every smile she'd given me had been anotherly. And now, with the biggest meeting of our lives looming, she was finally showing her hand. I let her talk, let her pretend that everything was normal. She rattled on about slide transitions and brand positioning, about the questions Jonas Hart might ask and how to handle Leona. Patel's aggressive style, but I barely heard her. My mind was already in the meeting room, already rehearsing the answers to questions I knew would come. I'd always known what to say when it mattered. I just hadn't realized until now that the biggest question would come from her. As she drained the mug, I saw it. That flicker of unease, the way she blinked twice in quick succession like she was trying to clear her head. She set the cup down with a small frown, fingers brushing the ceramic as if she wasn't sure she'd picked up the right one. "You okay?" I asked, voice soft, almost gentle. She looked at me like she wanted to scream, but couldn't. "Yeah," she said, but her voice sounded distant. She blinked again. "Just tired, I guess." I reached across the table, my hand warm against hers. "Big day," I said. "We've got this." She smiled, a small, tight thing that didn't reach her eyes. Then she stood, pulling on her blazer with practiced movements. "Yeah," she repeated. "We've got this." But she didn't sound sure. And as I picked up the black mug, her mug, and took that first sip, I tasted something else besides bitterness. I tasted victory, sharp and undeniable. One sip at a time, I thought, one sip at a time. I let her walk ahead of me toward the door. She didn't look back. Maybe she knew, maybe she didn't. Either way, the game had changed. And this time, I wasn't the incompetent. I was the man she taught to see the knives before they landed, and I was ready to use them. The lobby was all glass and steel, a cold monument to modern ambition. I'd always thought of Westbridge Strategies as an extension of the home Camille, and I had tried to build something honest with roots and purpose. But as I walked toward the conference room at 10:30 a.m., my gut told me that building had been laced with rot from the beginning. Camille had taken everything that mattered and turned it into a stepping stone for her own ambitions. Today, though, it was my turn. The door swung open and the Vale Crest Holdings boardroom hit me like a blast of cold air. High ceilings, a polished oak table that seemed to stretch forever, and at its far end, Leona Patel, the iron-willed strategist, with eyes like polished steel. Jonas Hart, always suspicious, his fingers drumming on his notepad like a man waiting to pick a fight. And Madison Uhl, the investor who could make or break us with a single measured question. Camille was already seated, smiling like she owned the place. Her hair was perfect, her lipstick a shade too bright, like she'd been practicing this performance all morning. She gestured for me to sit beside her, her fingers brushing mine in a way that might have been affectionate once, but now felt like a warning. I set me laptop down, took a breath. "This is it," she whispered, her breath warm against my ear. "Everything we've worked for." Her voice trembled just enough that I almost believed her, but I'd read her messages to Wesley. I'd seen the plans she'd laid out to have me fail. She didn't want this meeting to be the culmination of our shared effort. She wanted it to be the proof that I wasn't good enough, that I was the weak link she'd always had to compensate for. But the real work, every integration plan, every financial model was mine. Leona cleared her throat. "Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. Langford," she said, her tone crisp. "This is a $7.2 million decision. We're here to see if West Barbridge Strategies is the right partner for Vale Rest's national expansion." Jonas barely glanced at me. "I'll get straight to the point," he said. "We're concerned about execution. We've seen promising projections before. We need to know who's actually driving the strategy and that it's not just a PowerPoint exercise." My heart beat steady even as Camille took a sip from her mug. "My mug," I reminded myself. I watched her lips purse as she swallowed. She set it down a bit too hard. A flicker of uncertainty danced across her features. "Good." She launched into her opening statement, her voice smooth and rehearsed. She'd always been good in the first few minutes. Confident, charismatic, the kind of speaker who could hold a room's attention. She clicked through the first few slides, explaining our mission, the competitive analysis, the market segmentation. I'd written every word of it. But she delivered it like a stage actress. Each line of cue, each gesture a calculated hook. I kept my expression neutral, watching the board's reactions. Madison leaned forward, her pen poised over her notepad, her eyes narrowing. Slightly. She wasn't here to be dazzled by Camille's charm. She wanted substance proof that West Burbridge wasn't just another consulting firm with glossy decks and empty promises. 10 minutes in, Camille started to slow. Her fingers trembled slightly as she advanced the slides, her voice hitching. She coughed, cleared her throat. As we discussed in our preliminary call, her words faltered again. She reached for the mug and took another sip. I leaned forward, my hands folded on the table. "Camille," I said gently, "maybe I can take over from here." She glanced at me, her eyes glassy. "No, I've got it," she snapped, but her tone was too sharp, her smile too forced. Leona raised an eyebrow. "Is everything all right?" "Mrs. Langford." Camille's hand wavered over the laptop, her pointer trembling as she tried to advance to the next slide. "Yes, of course," she said, but her voice was small, almost childlike. Just amament." I saw Jonas exchange a look with Madison, a silent communication. That spoke volumes. They smelled blood in the water. I leaned back, waiting. This was the moment she'd planned to shine, to expose me as incompetent. But the look on her face, pale, unsteady, said she hadn't expected this. Whatever she'd planned had boomeranged. While Camille reorients, I said smoothly, "I'd be happy to walk you through the integration strategy. After all, that's the backbone of this project." She opened her mouth, like she wanted to object, but no words came out. Leona nodded. "Please, Mr. Langford, we're eager to understand how your team will manage implementation." Slid my laptop closer, pulled up the notes I had written late last night while Camille was in the guest room texting Wesley. My hands were steady, my mind clear. Bale Rest expansion requires a seamless integration of regional suppliers and local market analytics. We've developed a 3-phase strategy. Phase 1 is supplier onboarding and digital infrastructure alignment. Phase 2 is community outreach to build brand trust and local partnerships. Phase 3 is the training and support network that guarantees long-term sustainability. As I spoke, I saw Madison's pen moving rapidly. Jonas stopped drumming his fingers. Leona's eyes softened just a fraction. I had their attention. Camille's head drooped slightly. She reached again for the mug, her fingers trembling. As she brought it to her lips, she sipped, then set it down with a rattle. I kept talking, each sentence building on the last, each slide reinforcing the strategy I'd poured my heart into. I didn't embellish, didn't spin. I laid out the plan exactly as I'd envisioned it. Practical, thorough, executable. When I reached the financials, Camille shifted in her seat. She tried to speak. Some reflex tore claim her role, but the words stuck in her throat. She gave me a brutal smile that cracked at the edges. "This is our combined effort," I said, my tone even, but my eyes never left hers. Camille's brand strategy was essential in crafting our message, but the data integration and logistics, those are my wheelhouse. Leona nodded slowly. That's exactly what we needed to hear. I saw Camille's eyes drop to the table. I saw the way her shoulders slumped, the way her carefully constructed persona crumbled. Jonas leaned back, a small smirk playing at the edge of his lips. "Thank you, Mr. Langford," he said. "That was thorough." I smiled. "Happy to answer any questions." And just like that, the momentum shifted. The meeting that was supposed to expose my incompetence had become the stage where Camille's betrayal unfolded in real time. She'd underestimated me. But this was the meeting of our lives, and I'd just proven who the real architect of Westbridge Strategies was. The first 5 minutes were hers, polished, confident, the way she'd always been able to command a room when the stakes were low. But at minute 12, everything shifted. I saw it in the way her eyes darted to the mug, then back to the screen, as if the slides themselves had started swimming in front of her. Her voice, once smooth as glass, now wavered like a radio signal on the edge of a storm. She stood at the head of the conference table, her fingers gripping the edge of the laptop like it might steady her. "So, she began, the pointer trembling, as it cast a Reddit across the slide, showing supplier onboarding projections. We project. Jonas Hart leaned forward, his brow furrowed, ready to pounce. "You were saying, Mrs. Langford?" Her eyes flicked to him, panic flashing, behind the practice's mile. She looked at me then, the unspoken plea in her eyes almost too real. "Help me." But I wasn't here to save her. Not this time. She reached for the mug. My mug, I reminded myself, the one I'd switched before we left the house. The sip she took seemed to drain what little confidence remained. Her pupils dilated, her lips slackened as if her mind was underwater. I'd never wanted to hurt her. I just wanted the truth to rise to the surface, and here it was, one sip at a time. I watched her voice falter completely at minute 20. She looked down at the notes she'd clutched like a lifeline, but the words blurred before her eyes. "Excuse me," she muttered, the pointer dropping to Thetable with a dull clatter. She tried to breathe, a shallow, quick gasp that barely reached her lungs. Her hands, usually so precise in their movements, now trembled like leaves in a storm. Jonas cleared his throat, but Leona Patel spoke first. "Mrs. Langford, would you like a moment?" Her voice was firm, not professional, but I caught the undertone of skepticism. Investors didn't like surprises, and Camille was unraveling in front of them. Camille opened her mouth to answer, but no words came. She looked at me, desperate. I let the silence hang while Camille reorients, I said, my voice calm, even gentle. "I'll walk you through the integration strategy." I could feel the eyes on me. Madison's pin paused mid-sentence, Jonas's fingers frozen on the table. Camille's lips parted in protest, but she couldn't find the strength to object. She gave a small, defeated nod. I took a breath, steadying myself. "Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, integration is the cornerstone of Vailrest's national rollout. It's not enough to bring on suppliers. We need them aligned, motivated, and invested in the brand." Ace spoke. The screen behind me lit up with the roadmap I'd built from scratch. Phase 1, supplier onboarding. Phase 2, community outreach. Phase 3, support and feedback systems. Every detail was a testament to the hours I'd spent poring over. Data, fine-tuning processes, making sure this pitch was bulletproof. Camille slumped in her chair, her face pale, her eyes blinking rapidly. She reached for the mug again, but her hand barely made it halfway before it dropped back to her lap, limp and useless. I pressed on, outlining the KPIs that would guarantee stakeholder buy-in, the financial safeguards, the employee training, initiatives. My voice was strong, every word deliberate. This was the pitch I'd always known I'd have to deliver, but I'd hoped we'd be standing side by side, not facing off like rivals. The boardroom seemed to contract and expand with each slide, sometimes holding its breath, sometimes exhaling in low murmurs of approval. Madison's pen started to move again, faster this time, notes filling her page. Jonas's eyes narrowed as if he'd just realized he'd been asking the wrong questions all along. I glanced at Camille, her head down, hair falling across her face, her breathing shallow. Her hands were still trembling, her fingers brushing the edge of the laptop like she was trying to anchor herself to something solid. I wondered if she realized, yet that the game was over. She'd wanted to prove I was incompetent, that I couldn't handle the pressure of the big leagues. She'd wanted to show them all that she was the brains behind Westbird's strategies, but their own plan had tripped her up, and now she was trapped in the fog she tried to create for me. I advanced to the final slide, the one that mattered most. Here's the projected ROI based on phased integration and local market partnerships. I paused, letting the numbers speak for themselves. The figures were solid, No fluff, no overpromises, just data that proved what I'd always known. I'd built this strategy, not her. Leona leaned back, her expression thoughtful. "Mr. Langford, this is one of the most comprehensive rollout plans I've seen," she said, her voice even. "Your understanding of local market dynamics is impressive." Jonas grunted in agreement. Madison's eyes sparkled with interest. "Thank you," I said, nodding. "I've spent months refining every step to ensure maximum impact and minimal risk." A low sound escaped Camille's throat. Half a whimper, half a sob. She tried to speak, but her voice was hoarse. "We believe." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Her lips trembled, her eyes wide with terror. Jonas cocked his head. "Mrs. Langford." She looked at him, then at me, and I saw it. That moment when she realized the game had turned. The confidence drained from her eyes like water from a cracked vase. She reached again for the mug, but her hand faltered, halfway, then fell. I turned to the board. "As you can see, our integration strategy is robust and fully scalable." My voice was steady, measured. "If Failrest Holdings wants to dominate this market, we're the partner who can get you there." Madison smiled faintly. "We'll need to review the numbers in detail, of course," she said. "But this looks promising." Leona gave a curt nod. "Very promising." I could feel Camille's eyes on me, pleading lost. I didn't. Look at her. She'd had her chance. She'd wanted me to fall apart. She'd counted on it. But instead, she built the stage for her own undoing. 30 minutes of Falk. That's all it took. 30 minutes to show them who the real architect was. 30 minutes to prove that no matter what plan she and Wesley had cooked up, I was the one holding the map. And in that moment, with the board nodding in approval and Camille slumped in her chair,